This is Dianne Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Dianne Andrews in Black and White, and I'm your host, Dianne Andrews. Thanks for tuning in to us today, whether you're in the 3 million homes in Louisiana and Western Mississippi that we go into here in Dianne Andrews in Black and White, or whether you're watching us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dianne Andrews. And after this week, we should probably have almost 90 shows out there that I've done in a little over 2 years. And as I tell people, I'm like Donald Trump. This is my charity business, and I have a real business too, but these are issues that I think need to have lights shined on, or people just need to know. And things that we need to talk about, race relations, things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but we need to talk about them. And talking about race relations, I have two guests with me today that back in the 1960s and 70s, one has written on it, Mr. Stanley Nelson. Thanks for being here. He's the editor of Concordia Sentinel. That's the small, I've read, newspaper in Ferriday, it's a weekly, in Ferriday, Louisiana. He is a Pulitzer Prize finalist. And you have won another journalism award from the University of Oregon, I think the Payne Award for Journalism. And so we appreciate you being here, and I have his book here, Devil's Walking. Klan's murders along the Mississippi River in the 1960s, and this was mostly in the area of Ferriday, Louisiana, and Natchez, Mississippi, up in northern Louisiana. As people who keep up with Dianne Andrews know, I did a show about a month ago with the daughter of Sonny Taylor, one of the infamous silver dollar killers, we'd say, murderers, I'd like to say, but I don't know if it's ever been proven that Sonny really killed anybody, so I can't really say that, but purportedly, murderer, Sonny Taylor, and his daughter Deborah, we Skyped her in, and she was so willing and such a great person to want to tell the truth about what happened in the 1960s and 70s and how heinous the Silver Dollar Group was. One reason their name was the Silver Dollar Group, I think each one carried a silver dollar, didn't they? Was it the date of their birth, the year of their birth or something?
Yes.
Hey, they were smart guys, I guess, and they had sentimentality because they wanted a silver dollar representing themselves. And but the crimes they did were horrific. Now, next to him, I have a real hero sitting, and that is Mr. David Watley. I really appreciate you being here, Mr. Watley. You've given so much, and people don't know who you are. He's given so much. He integrated the Ferriday High School. I looked it up last night, and it's still the Ferriday High School there in Ferriday, but it had a rating of 4 out of 10, so I don't know how great a high school it was, and I don't know what website that was I was on. But back in the early 1960s, Mr. David Watley, they needed someone to integrate the schools. And he was the only person who would step up to the plate. You were almost 20 years old when you went to Ferriday.
Right.
And his grandmother, who he lived with, said, I will do it. And the core, Congress of Racial Equality, had to come down and guard his house. His house was bombed. His grandmother's house was bombed. They attempted to kill all of them in there in Ferriday, and he still integrated the high school.
Yes.
And for that, he's also a veteran. As you see, Mr. Watley is a victim of Agent Orange. He's a veteran. He gave so much for this country. I have this certificate of excellence and appreciation from Dianne Andrews in Black and White for you, for what you have done.
Thank you.
For Ferriday, for Louisiana, and for the country. We really appreciate that, Mr. Watley. And more people, as I say, should know what Mr. David Watley did, because you are a true American hero. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your book. Tell me, what made you were chronicling it, what made you want to do this? A white man, and I guess you started this in, what, 10 years ago? How long ago?
I'll tell you exactly how I got into it. Back in 2007, the FBI announced that it was going to go back and look at some unresolved cold cases from the 1960s, and Frank Morris, who owned a shoe shop in Ferriday, his name was on that list. So I wrote a story, just a real short story, and just basically outlined the fact that he had died in a terrible fire in the arson after he died 4 days after the arson of his shop.
And he was a black man. Frank Morris was a black man.
He was a black man whose shop actually was catered to both black and white clientele.
Yeah, Deborah said her father used to bring her down, Sonny Taylor, to his shop.
It was
the best in the area, I understand.
It was a good shop.
Yes.
Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah, quite well.
Okay.
He had run that shop for a good 30 years by 1964. So after I wrote the first article, I got, and really thought that would be it because it was so long ago. And, you know, how do you go back and look at something like that? But I got a phone call from his daughter, Rosa Williams, who was 12 when the shop was set on fire and died. And Frank died, and she later moved to Las Vegas. Someone had sent her a copy of the paper. And she said, I just want to thank you for the article. She said that all these years have passed, and no one has ever told me anything about what happened to my grandfather. The case has not been solved. I've always wanted to know what happened, not out of vengeance, but just like anyone would be. Why would someone do that to my grandfather? And later on, I recall the fact that when I was young, we came upon this terrible fire one night. A car accident, this young family burned up in that car, and we watched that happen, and including a 7-year-old girl that was in the back seat. And it kept rolling over in my head.
You were a young boy?
I was probably a teenager.
And this was in Ferriday?
This was out, well, actually in Franklin Parish. And I believe we were coming back from a football game one night, and we came up on that scene. So after I talked to Rosa, that's the fact that I had witnessed that as a young person. I could not get in my mind, in my head, how someone could go to someone's business like Frank Morris, who was in his own shop.
And he and Uncle Boyd, another Silver Dollar Group member, were best friends.
They were.
Yes.
So the issues of black and white, was really complicated.
Very.
But the thing is, just eventually I called Rosa back after talking to the publishers of the paper, and I said, I don't know if we can solve this, Rosa, but we're going to try. And so we started writing stories, and then found out about more victims, and then I learned about David Watley and his involvement in civil rights and all the incredibly heroic things that he did. And as a matter of fact, his grandmother's home, David was there that night, was actually bombed by 2 Silver Dollar Group members, including Sonny Taylor, Deborah Taylor's father. So
they would have killed a house full of people. How many people were there, Mr. Watley, in the home when they bombed it?
Approximately 6 to 8 people.
Including CORE, the Congress, the people that come in from New York to help you all. Now, you were also, I want to mention, a Deacon for Defense.
Right.
Martin Luther King denounced the Deacons for Defense because these were black people that armed themselves to protect themselves, not to kill anyone, but to protect themselves against people like Sonny Taylor, like Urkel Boyd, who would go out and kill them and cause you harm for no reason. But Martin Luther King denounced them, from what I remember.
Yeah,
and you all were also at about the same time as the Silver Dollar Group, the Deacons for Defense.
Oh, yeah.
And you were in Bogalusa, heavy in Bogalusa, middle of Louisiana, Ferriday area.
Ferriday, yeah.
And then where else? Were you anywhere else?
Pretty much everywhere around the South area that was looking for help. We traveled from place to place. We went there. We went to places like Louisiana, up around Jackson, Mississippi, around the area of I can't quite think of it right now. Anyway,
but they would call you and say, we're being people that they're messing with us. The Ku Klux Klan, we need your help.
And we would leave and we would go.
And I understand you all used to shoot up at people and call. You would go out to some Klan rallies and shoot up, but not to kill anyone.
Shoot at anyone. We did not.
Oh, Jonesboro, you were big in Jonesboro. Around those, is it mill towns? It seems the black people who were in it may have had a little money and they weren't standing for this.
Right.
Yes.
These are the people that would contact us and said that we need help, and we would go from place to place, and when we have rallies, they would come to us. But no, at any time that we advocated violence. We did not do that.
Just defense. It's called Deacons for Defense.
That's what we did.
Right. I want to mention too also that you had Agent Orange in the Army and had to have an amputation, and that's why this man is truly a hero, because he served his country twice and he lost a leg.
Yes.
So tell us more about the book. After that, Mr. Nelson.
What the book is basically about is in the area of northeastern Louisiana and southwest Mississippi was really back in the 60s, and people don't know this. Everybody remembers the 3 civil rights workers that were killed in Philadelphia, Mississippi in the summer of '64, but months before that happened, Klan violence in the 60s actually broke out in the Ferriday and Natchez area. And by the time those 3 civil rights workers were killed, there had already been 3 murders in
Ferriday, Natchez area.
Concordia and the Natchez area.
Oh, yeah.
As well as a number of other projects involving arsons and beatings. And so basically what the book is about, it chronicles how the Silver Dollar Group was formed from the 3 basic clans, the United Klans of America, the White Knights, and the Original Knights. And
Oh, it's three
there were
groups.
3 major clans, but the people that became involved in the Silver Dollar Group were the more violent members of those traditional clans who felt as if the traditional clans were not doing enough to stop integration. They felt that the robes, the cross burnings, all of these type of things were silly, didn't achieve anything, and so they basically went underground. They didn't have any kind of publicity. They were totally secret. And it was about 15 hardcore members, and what they did was go out and they would kill and hurt people.
Deborah said her father, Sonny Taylor, once told her, we take black people or anyone that they don't like, I guess, because they killed Frank Morris. And then I understand after Frank was murdered, that 2 of the two Klansmen ended up dead who Urkel Boyd thought had killed Frank Morris because that was his friend. Are you familiar with that? Or?
That's an allegation. I'm not sure that truly
That really happened?
But I can tell you of the 8 Silver Dollar Group murders, 1 was a white man whose name was Earl Hodges from Franklin County, Mississippi, who was killed because he opposed the Klan on a project, and the Klansmen there were afraid that he was going to go to authorities and tell what that particular Klan had done, including 2 murders. Earl Hodges was beaten to death in August of 1965, and his body found behind his house. And he was beaten strictly for the reason that he was standing up to the Klan. So
they didn't care what color you were.
they didn't care what color you were. They were, their main goal was to stop integration, and by any means whatsoever possible. They did not want their children or anybody's children going to school with black people. And
Well, how could Urkel Boyd be friends with Frank Morris, who I understand dated white women, and was that part of the problem? That was purported to be part of the problem?
Yes. Urkel Boyd is really a sort of stands apart from the typical Klansman. He had this relationship with Frank Morris, friendship. He was totally pro-segregation. I have not linked him to any murders. But the funny thing is, he would go to a Klan rally on Saturday night and preach in a black church on Sunday morning. It was just a really strange, bizarre type of life that he lived that was really, he was set apart from
The rest of the
ordinary
Silver Dollar.
Klansmen. Yes,
Okay.
he was sort of an extra special type case. But Silver Dollar.
So you think I'm trying to comprehend this. Do you think he liked black people too, but he wanted to be a Klansman also? He wasn't as prejudiced as he purported himself to be?
No, it's sort of like this. We have to get along together, black and white. And but you should go to your own school, and as a member of the white race, I am superior to you. We will help you. But we do not mix with each other. We do not go to school together, even though he preached in a black church. I mean, you
It's
can't
weird.
try to
Understand
you
it.
can't put
Okay.
logic to it.
Right. Okay.
It's just people that hate and
But I'm wondering if he was a bigger hater as he made himself out to be, since you never could tie him, and you did a lot of investigation to any real murders like Sonny Taylor.
But when you going out there and you're espousing a belief that blacks are inferior to you, that black lives do not really matter, I don't really know how you can say his level is better than the other. I mean, murder is worse than not murder.
But
still,
that's it.
You know, I don't know how you separate that.
Yeah, unless he was doing it just to be a part of, I want to be accepted by the white people, but I really don't believe this.
Well, it was an interesting thing, because his sons told me about his relationship with Frank Morris, and here's the thing, this anti-integration, and Frank Morris would come to their home and sit at their table and eat with them.
And that's not like white people in the 60s in the South.
It's just a unique...
Bizarre.
bizarre. That's
Yeah.
probably a
Yeah.
better word for it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he was a bizarre character. So.
Yes, and there were lots of those, and so, you know, the Silver Dollar Group did one thing that the White Knights were not able to. In the Philadelphia, Mississippi case, some of those Klansmen were brought to justice. Vernon Dahmer in Hattiesburg, his killers were brought to justice. Some of them were. The Silver Dollar Group, probably everybody in this room, most people have never heard that name
That's
before.
right.
That's how good that they were. And they were the most secretive Klan cell ever known to exist in the United States.
But they were the smallest ever, but the
They
most
were
heinous?
small.
Yeah.
I would say so because of the fact that they got away. And the thing that they were able to do, they worked in small numbers, and they weren't like the White Knights who would have these meetings like the 3 civil rights workers that were killed. There was a big meeting at an old abandoned school where dozens of men were there. That's too many people to have a criminal operation, which is essentially what that was. The Silver Dollar Group men were actually, what they had was, the FBI would call it a Klan within a Klan, and they worked absolutely as a terrorist organization. And
those were the elites.
that's why no one knew
Those were the
about
elites
it.
of the group, you know. Those are the
What
best
did
of
you
the
hear
best.
your grandmother say about them, David, about the Klan there in Ferriday?
Well, she was kind of
Was she a domestic
had
worker,
she
or
had
was
the-
she
uh-huh.
home? Was she a home wife or
no,
worker?
She
Did
was,
she go out of the
she
home?
was elderly. She was retired from whatever kind of work. Anyway, what happened was, she told me that whatever I wanted to do, she would be with me. She would back me up.
I took a lot of
Whatever I wanted
strength
to-
and courage from her.
Yeah. So I told her that I would. You know, when the civil rights workers came, she talked with me, and she asked if I thought that we should let them in, that we should take them in. And I told her I did, because I mean, they were here for us, and yet we're gonna let them sleep out under the stars. You know, when we do have an extra room, we can let them in our house, and that's
And that
how
was
they.
core. That was Congress
core,
racial
yeah.
equality that came down.
Right. Yeah. So core
No
came
one
in
wanted
with,
to let them stay.
No.
People were afraid.
They was afraid.
And you can understand that, but she was a great woman too.
Yeah.
And that's where you got it from, huh?
I would imagine.
The same genes.
And the fear they had was exactly what happened to David and his family.
Yeah.
They were bombed.
The bomb.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
what happened that it didn't go off? There was some poor mechanics?
A little bit. They were constantly tinkering with explosives, and they became quite good at it. The bomb that was thrown in David's yard, for one thing, it fell short of the house.
You
I
did,
believe.
right beside the house.
Yeah, instead of against the house. And I have a feeling that it was tight, that had it hit the house, that percussion would have caused the bomb to explode better. But somehow between the fuse and the actual explosive, there was a little bit of a separation, and it didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Right.
Thank God.
Right, thank God.
People would have been hurt.
Yeah.
Dead, probably.
Possibly.
Yes.
That's right.
That very night, I was asleep in the room right where the bomb was thrown.
Was this several days after Corps came in, or had they been there
they
a
had
little
been
while?
there. They had been there. Yeah. See,
Had you got any threats that we are going to do something to you?
all the time, because when I go to school at Ferriday High, they would take me in the car was assigned to me, of course. It was assigned to take me
Corps would take
up
you.
there, yeah, and drop me off, and then they would come back to the home and wait for the evening to come back and pick me up, so I wouldn't have to get on the bus or anything. And so
What was that like? They
well,
called the N-word, the spit on.
Oh yeah. Well, when I get to school in the mornings, they would be the school was a 2-story building. They would line the windows of the building and open the windows and shout out all kinds of names and stuff
Call
like
you
that.
nigger.
All the time, yes indeed. And so that happened from the time I get out the car, and the walkway was about, I guess, maybe 50 feet to the school, and I would have to walk that distance to get into the school. And once
Alone? You had to walk that alone?
Yeah, alone. Yeah, they sit out there that long. Once I get inside the school, then they have to leave because school regulations, I guess.
Right.
Anyway, once I'm in the school, once I'm inside the school, then they would have their people, the other students, to line up along the halls and along the walkways and stuff inside that they will block my entrance, and they would just leave enough room that I might could squeeze through. So once I touched one of them, then that was a reason for them to attack me.
Did they ever attack you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. See,
They
I would
beat
go
you?
down and I would come ease through them, and I would get past them and go here to my classroom. And I remember vividly, I left class one day to go to the restroom. When I got back, my books and everything, my assignments, everything was torn up and thrown all across the floor. And when I came into the room, the teacher was overcome with grief. She jumps up and runs to the principal's office, I guess out of fear or whatever that I was going to retaliate. And so the principal would call me down and tell me that, you know, I've got to go home today, you know, because we have some disturbance and I've got to leave school. So I would call my people and they'd come back and pick me up again. And
Did you graduate? Did you get enough days in there
yeah.
to graduate?
Well, I was still in school when they elected the president of this of the draft board of the school board as president of the draft board, and so he drafted me into the military.
So they got you out of there one
Yeah,
way or the other.
Right. So I went into the military. I did not graduate on time, of course. I did order GED from that area, and I did my work, and I got my scores up enough that they would give me a diploma.
That's wonderful.
From Ferriday High.
Well, how soon after that did blacks start going to Ferriday High after you went?
It was the integration there.
That was
there.
it.
You were the first, and that, right after that, people
Yeah.
started coming.
People started going in. The
You
thing
know.
I'll never forget that David said after he had that experience, and he was actually, when he was drafted, he went to Vietnam. And he talked about how he often thought that he wasn't good enough to go to Ferriday High, but he was good enough to go and fight for
Yeah.
his country.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
real shame of
It's-
what.
it's a
It's
hard-
not just Mr. Watley
No,
that
it's
thought it
not.
was a lot of black
All of us.
guys
Yeah.
who that happened to.
But
And you lost your leg based on Agent
Well,
Orange.
now I'm in the process of trying to, you know, as the military will do, government will do, I've got to prove this now, okay?
Prove the
But I
Agent
had-
Orange. How do you do that?
Prove that it was connected to military. So I had no other incidents or anything like that that will cause this.
You're trying to get a prosthetic? Is that
Yeah.
what you're
Well,
trying
that's
to
what
do?
I'm doing now. I've got a prosthetic. It should be ready in a couple of days, they said, which is my second one, of course. The first one, I got some blisters off of it, so they had to take it back.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to have to go through that same type of thing of proving that this by hiring doctors and having them to do tests and to see if there's any possibility they could connect this to the military, and then they would.
So the VA doctors won't do it because you can't trust them to say it was connected to the military.
Exactly.
This is a shame. What
Yeah.
I've done shows on VA whistleblowing on Shreveport. I had Shea Wilkes come down. He's a social worker and a veteran, and he proved that 30-some people had died waiting on services with the VA for misscheduling, on purpose misscheduling.
Yeah.
So I have a real kindness in my heart for veterans. What you all do for this country.
With that, and the thing that I think is so, that David's experience, his life experience, and particularly what he did at Ferriday High, I wish we could get every dropout student in this country just to come listen what he went through.
That's right.
Just for the opportunity for all of us to go and have a good education, because
Right.
it took an enormous amount of courage and
That's
even
right.
more to keep going back every day.
Right. The black people we do a disservice to ourselves by not taking advantage of everything we
Right.
should be
Exactly.
taking advantage
Exactly.
of.
I
We
think
should be
really
in school.
for all of us.
For
now.
everybody, but I'm just
anybody.
saying in that time it
At
was
that time,
blacks who
particularly.
had to give
Yeah.
up so much of their physical and mental to be able to do
Oh, yeah.
what he did. He gave up so much for us to be able to do what we do today.
He is absolutely a hero. We're
That's
sitting
right.
beside a hero right
That's
now.
right, and that's why
Yeah.
when I talked to you several times and I talked to you and thank you for connecting me with
Yeah.
Mr. DeWatley, and that's why I wanted to give him that certificate of excellence.
I would like to,
I can do for you at this time and shine a light on what you've done for us.
I would like for you to know that this man has not forgotten. He has contacted me through the years. I mean, he has been beating the bush to find information, stuff that he could use to shed light on what happened back there. And he's been in contact with me and many others, as you would see when you read the book, that he has really gone above and beyond You know,
What makes you do that? What's the drive, Mr. Nelson, that makes you want to shine a light and show what really happened? Is it for the survivors to know who really killed their relative?
Well, certainly that's the most, the important thing to uncover that past. But for me personally, when I first talked to Rosa Williams, it was simply putting myself in her shoes. What if that had been my father or my grandfather or whatever? How would I feel? And working for a newspaper, we certainly were in the best position to try to do something about it. And I think too, I wanted to know not only what happened, for instance, to Frank Morris, I wanted to know why. Why would two men go to that shop that night and set a building on fire?
Close the front
inside,
entrance,
yeah.
right?
With a man could not get out
Yes.
and burn him over.
Yes.
Why, who could do that?
Right.
And that's my main
in the
journey.
book?
It's
It's
all
still.
in there.
It's very
Did you find
hideous.
out why?
Well, I don't know that
I haven't
you
finished
ever.
reading.
I don't know that you ever understand pure evil.
Right.
But you.
Did you find out who?
Yes, the names are in there. Yes,
Okay.
every
Okay.
one of the
Can you say
murders
him too?
are in there.
Sonny Taylor, is he one of the ones?
Sonny Taylor was not connected directly to a murder, but he did plant the bomb that injured George Metcalf, a civil rights worker, in 1965. He was involved in bomb making.
Yes, and I think his daughter mentioned that on the show I did. Tell everybody where they can get this wonderful book and find out more about Devil's Walking.
Well, it's available in many bookstores, Barnes & Noble here in Baton Rouge. It's available online, Amazon, any typical online place that would
If you're,
have books.
you're interested in true history that had been forgotten or never uncovered, it seems, until you did it. So I want to thank you, too, for uncovering this so people really know what happened in Ferriday, Natchez area in the 1960s, the late 1960s.
Thank you.
What stopped them? And I know we're going to have to go, but
Stop.
The FBI was able, after bringing 180 agents into the region in 1967, they were able eventually to infiltrate the Silver Dollar Group so that they had informants in almost every meeting that was held. And even though they were not able to get convictions because so many witnesses would not talk and because the Silver Dollar Group was so good at not talking themselves, but they were able to neutralize those men, and even though many of them lived long lives, they were never involved in the Klan again.
well, thank you very much, and people go out and get Devil's Walking because they were truly devils. And thank you for what you did
Thank you.
for us, Mr. Wiley, in multiple
Thank you.
ways.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Watch us next week. Thank you for tuning in to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. I think this was a great, great story of really two heroes here. Thank you.
Order your copies now of Dianne Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Dianne Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.